Hello and welcome to the Healing Dreams Project, exploring projective dreamwork for your health and wholeness with hosts Billie Ortiz and Dr. Royce. I'm the producer Viviana, and today we have a dreamer who called into our dreamer hotline. We have Lauren's dream. I will start with the dream that was called in. So here we go with Lauren's dream.
Hi, this is Lauren, and I wanted to share a dream I had in late February. And I chose it because it's a story that most people would be familiar with. So, in the dream, I'm walking through a marketplace that's covered by a canopy, so the marketplace is shaded. I'm walking down a lane, and on each side are little stone buildings, and it looks very Mediterranean or Greek. And as I'm walking along, I can't figure out where I am or why I'm there. So I decide to look for something familiar, and I see that through an open gate from the marketplace, I can walk out into the countryside. And there's a forest and there's a meadow. So I think, well, I'll walk out there to have a better vantage point to see where I am. And right before I'm able to leave the marketplace, a herd of bulls rushes in. And they are running around me, and I'm very startled, but then I become very excited because I think I'm about to watch the story of Zeus and Europa unfold. Zeus is one of these bulls. So I leap out of the way to climb up onto a gate so they won't trample me, and I'm watching, trying to figure out where Zeus is, and all of a sudden, the young man herding the cattle walks into the marketplace, lanky, kind of mischievous, sort of playful, not the way you would expect Zeus to look or seem, but I immediately recognize that this is Zeus. He is the person herding the bulls. He's not actually a bull. And I'm very confused. I'm trying to process this. And he sees me and comes over and kind of stands against the gate and starts talking to me. And I think, oh my goodness, I'm playing the part of Europa. How do I get out of this without messing up all of history? This is awkward. You know, I'm still me, but he doesn't recognize that. He thinks I'm Europa, and this whole thing is unfolding. So anyway, I realize that he's sweet-talking Europa. He's trying to get her to go away with him. And I realized that he didn't kidnap her, and he wasn't an old, scary man taking advantage of a young girl. And then, sort of because of my panic, I end the dream. But I had the dream right when the war in Ukraine started, and people were talking about the future of Europe. And of course, Europa is the mother of Europe. So I thought it was a very timely dream, and I'd be curious to hear.
That's good. Wow. That's fantastic. I love it.
So we'll probably need to ask you some questions so we get the feel of this dream.
Okay.
And I'm curious in putting myself in the projective format. As a dreamer, do I study Greek mythology, or is that something familiar with me?
Yeah, good question.
I have I'm not like a Greek scholar, but I'm familiar with the core classical mythology. But the funny thing is that is not one that I would think about very much. I mean, in fact, in my children's schooling, we're actually focusing more on like Norse mythology, not Greek. And so that kind of surprised me because it's not one of my favorite myths. And it wasn't something I'd even been thinking about during my waking hours. And I think that's why I was so astounded because it kind of came out of left field.
Yeah.
Even though it's something we're all so familiar with, we learned that myth from a very early age in Western culture. But
And so when I did, even though I say it's the dreamer, it's not really one of my favorite myths. It is what, how do I feel about it though? I mean, what do I think about the myth when I hear it and hear it replayed so somewhat in my dream?
well, I think as a woman, I don't really like the abduction myths,
Mm-hmm.
or the myths when Zeus goes in and seduces someone and then she gets punished for it later, turned into a plant or whatever.
Uh-huh.
I really actually hate those.
Mm-hmm.
So when I got excited in the dream, like I see this happening, I'm not excited because I'm excited about what I think is about to happen. I'm excited to see the myth,
Mm-hmm.
violence, abduction, rape, all of those themes. That's why I don't like the story of Zeus and Europa.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So one of the things that I know a little bit about Greek mythology. I wish I knew more, but I know some. But I know that Zeus, he always said, though a lot of the women say, I want to see you in your true form. I want to see you in your true form. And he goes, no, 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 you don't really want to see me in my true form, because he knows that he will burn them up because it's like too much. So that's what I found when I first heard your dream, and I reminded myself of the myth and read it in a couple of different books I have. I thought, that's interesting that he doesn't show up as the bull, he shows up as a young man, and that's my understanding as the dreamer.
Mm-hmm.
If I look at it from the layer of it being a repeat of a replay of the myth.
Right.
Yeah. So it's not, and like you say, he's not some scary old man. He's this young, attractive man that starts chatting me up at the gate, right?
Yeah. That was because he wasn't even dressed like an aristocrat. He was just a normal guy, like a
Mm-hmm.
normal young guy. And I thought, I had to kind of condense it for the message, but I
Right.
remember thinking, is this a disguise, or is he really like this? Because
Right.
sometimes when you see like classical statues or renderings of the gods, or even Renaissance paintings, they kind of have like muscles for their muscles, like their muscles have muscles,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
they're very stern, and they're not approachable at all in
Mm-hmm.
many of the images.
Yeah.
Um, and so to see someone who's kind of like approachable and even trying to like not take by force but kind of draw you in, that was shocking.
Yeah.
That's
Very.
an interesting word. As I am shocked as the dreamer to experience the version of Zeus in my dream. I would expect a muscular, bombastic
Mhm.
kind of energy, and I experience a casual, uh, non-threatening, very approachable, in my projection, a kind of a gentle seductiveness that I'm being gently wooed. And yet, as the dreamer, I'm noticing this. So it's not like
Mm-hmm.
the figure of Zeus in the dream is fooling me in my dream. It's like I get his angle. I get this. Now, it doesn't mean I'm not attracted, but I do get it. I get something is different here.
Yeah.
And that speaks
Right.
to me in if I can keep blabbering, it's like there is this incredible drama unfolding,
Mm.
and I'm directing this at some level as the dreamer, certainly have a big influence on this. And so it makes me wonder, all of those elements of who I am are emerging into uh, in the dream theater. I find that just so fascinating and so different than regular mythology about Zeus.
Mhm.
If I,
Can I
yeah,
oh
please
yeah, go
do.
ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. So when I was trying to explain that, like, I knew I was myself, but I was like, everyone around me apparently thought I was someone else. Um, I was trying to figure out how to explain this because I don't know about you all, but different dreams have different formats for me. Like
Mhm.
how much I am participating or observing, or whether I'm fully me or whether. So when I was a kid, there was this show called Wishbone. I
Mm.
don't know if any of you ever were
Yeah.
familiar with it.
Yeah.
But so it was this little Jack Russell Terrier, and he wasn't a speaking dog, but there was a voice actor that made his like internal dialogue. And so he had his real life where he was running around with all of these middle school kids, and then he would take you into a piece of famous literature, and he would assume the identity of one of the main characters, and he would kind of walk you through that piece of literature, so you as the viewer knew it was still Wishbone, but all of the actors around him thought he was like, if it was Romeo and Juliet, he was Romeo, so they all thought he was Romeo, but you're watching it, you know he's Wishbone.
Mm.
um so it's kind of like that, where
Mhm.
I was Wishbone.
Mhm.
I was going into the story. I know I'm still me, but and if you were the viewer, you would have known I was still me. But around me, it's all real. Everyone's very immersed in this and thinks it's real and thinks I'm really this character and all of that. So that's kind of the format of that dream.
Yeah.
I,
That's great.
so if you've seen Wishbone, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. My daughter used
If
to
you
have the
haven't,
book.
that sounds confusing.
Yeah, we used to have the books,
Okay.
and when she was little. Yeah, I remember those very well. So Viviana, you were
Okay.
going to say something?
I have a question for the dreamer. Wondering if
Okay.
how in my life this dream, how I relate it within the dream. So how does a dream reflect my life? In that, is there a part of my life where I'm not as actually everyone thinks I am, but I know inside, internally, I'm a little bit different, but I'm playing the role of. Is there
Ooh,
anything like that that resonates?
question.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Um, well, yeah, I mean, on two different levels. I think when you're a parent, there are parts like if all of the flags that represent different parts of yourself were like like a Tibetan prayer flag chain, and you're like, which of these flags should I take down so I don't embarrass my kids or whatever? I mean, you do have to like kind of tone things down once you become a parent so that
Yeah.
you can have that kind of social acceptability, I guess. I don't want to say freak flag because I don't mean it exactly, but you're like, maybe I shouldn't fly all of my freak flags now that I'm a parent, you know.
Oh,
Um
yeah.
Yeah, I
and
hear.
that's not literal, but I'm trying to think of like a better term.
Hmm.
But on the other hand, also I'm a writer, which is how I met Dr. Fitz. Um and so the kind of personality I project during my daily life is different from the internal life that I have going on. Like the thoughts that I'm thinking are probably a lot different than most people that I interact with every day suspect. So it
Wow.
could apply in two different ways.
Yeah. Mm. Very nice.
Yeah, that's a beautiful reflection, and how I project upon that is that I'm doing my best to be thoughtful about what aspect of myself is being shown and expressed at a certain place and a certain time with certain people. And 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 that for me is maturity and wisdom, and certainly not perfect, because in me, I would always have a struggle with, am I hiding something inappropriately? Am I not being authentic? And the other part is, I need to be thoughtful about how I am in the world, and say, as with my children, because they're in their formation. And so I want to notice that and love that and respect that. And in other settings, I will be somehow somewhat different. I find this fascinating in the dream that I've had, that I'm doing this very clearly. I'm noticing who I am. I, I love the idea of the wishbone story, that helps to kind of update this uh, way of being in the world, that I am all of these things all at the same time.
Right.
And in the dream, I am all of these aspects all at the same time. In fact, I'm even Zeus in my dream, because Zeus is somebody I've, at least in part, had a hand in creating the image that he carries in the dream. I'm the marketplace as well.
Mm.
So I'm everything in the dream, and I'm noticing all of these aspects of who I am.
Okay. Yeah. So if it were my dream, Lauren, I would try to remove myself from just the myth view of it and see it as
Mm.
an interior unfolding in my own psyche. Like, what is it, as Royce is saying, what part of me is Zeus like? What part of me is like like this lanky version of him? Lanky and mischievous. I like that. And also, the Europa part of myself. And what do bulls mean to me? All of those things. I would look at it strictly as though I'd never knew what the myth was. What is this unfolding in me? And it reminds me of the myth. And I feel so, because I'm very moved in my version of the dream about the last bit. It's like I'm just worried that I'm going to, mess up history somehow. If I don't go along with this myth the way it's supposed to go, it's just I'm gonna this is I want what am I going to do about this without messing up history? That's what I wrote down. And then I panic and I end the dream. So there's some part of me that I can't. I mean, there on one level, I have to say to myself, well, how could I ever really change the myth? I mean, it is what it is, and myths tend to unfold and change over centuries, of course. But there's something about that. There's really no way for me to be able to change this. It is what it is, and it's gonna remain that way. So I would look at it in the sense of what is currently going on in my life that makes me feel as though I'm being abducted, as makes me feel as though I'm going to be whisked off by this Zeus-like energy. Um, and I say that these are not my favorite myths. I don't like these abduction myths. It makes me feel, there's violation. But of course, it's a metaphor. So I have to see, how does that show up in my life would be the question I would ask.
Yeah. Well, I think there are a lot of life circumstances that you can't change. I mean, for anyone, and I have life circumstances like that too. And sometimes you um you want to find a resolution, but you just know it's going to be a long time. Um I know that my son was born with medical issues. He's disabled. And I know that when he um like I said, I'm a writer, and I like traveling, and I when I was in college, my friends always thought that I was more of a very unstructured artistic person. So to have a child where suddenly you become essentially a nurse
Mm,
and you have to be extremely structured,
mm,
um, and you go kind of into this very institutionalized world that, I study herbalism and so on, and you go into a lot of allopathic medicine and a lot of surgery. And
mm,
I remember I felt like, here's my child and I love my child, but I'm getting pulled into this situation that is so enormous and I don't feel like I fit into this situation. But of course, I'll go there because you'll go anywhere for your child.
mm,
And it's not exactly a situation that has any end that I want to see, because the end of the situation would mean the end of my child.
mm,
So that's one situation in my life that I feel like could be compared to abduction, because
mm,
I didn't choose it. Well, not consciously. some some people would say spiritually I chose it, but consciously my personality didn't choose that. It's just what life gave to me, and it's become my path.
mm. Right.
I want to respond. There's a, a button that I get pushed. Uh, I do know that some people sincerely believe that we choose a path, we choose, a situation, and 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 I do not believe that. I believe that sometimes we certainly do when we have some way to manage it and influence, and even in our denial, we may push or nudge ourselves into a situation. But I don't believe we are born into something by choice, or that we receive those kinds of uh, challenges out of a sense of this is my spiritual um, uh, mandate that was handed to me, or that I chose it, I think things like this happen. And the reason I'm lifting that up is this dream feels to me like an amazing transformative dream. I am reforming history. I'm reforming my history. I loved how the dreamer was sharing about uh, how I have accepted this uh, this stuff of life. And I do feel abducted. I mean, how much more honest could I be than to say, I didn't choose this and I have this. Now, how do I create beauty and meaning and adventure and purpose in the midst of the paradox of experiencing anguish and sorrow and turmoil and anxiety? And I feel like the dream is kind of making a movie for me
Mm,
about watching how I am doing that, how I've done it, how I'm doing it, and how I will do it. I'm getting goosebumps. So for
mm,
me, it's on target as a dream for me. I wake myself up because I don't remember the whole dream at the moment, but it's like, what are people going to say? I don't want to mess up history. I've got to wake up, and it's like, yeah, that would be a good thing to change history. That would be amazing to
mm,
change Europe, and it's as big as that to me. Well, the dream is gracious. It helps use my anxiety to leave the dream inconclusive, because it is not like a script that I was handed. It is not like a script. I'm I'm writing. I'm a writer. I write the script.
mm.
I'm influenced by everything. Yeah, I'm affected by everything. And the dream for me is existential. I create meaning and purpose as best as I can, with as much intention as I can. And there's a lot I don't control. And so the dream wakes me up and says, join in this creative, unpredictable, and loving process. Wake up into this. I am on my right path. Not the perfect path. I'm on my right path.
Lauren, do you want to respond?
Yeah, I can see that now that you've said all of that. Now when you were speaking, I was even thinking about the bulls coming in, charging in. And I don't know about you ladies, but Dr. Fitz, you were raised on a farm or around
Yeah, and
farms, right?
please call me Royce. Let's not get too formal here.
Okay.
Yes, I
Um,
farm and ranch life. Yes.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, when bulls come stampeding, and if you're in the crowd, you get out of the way. I mean, they're not going to, you can get really hurt. And so just the power of when they were running into the marketplace, and I had to immediately get out of the way because I was afraid I was just going to get trampled. Um, I think when an unexpected life event happens that's very difficult, it's kind of like that. Like you have to figure out how to respond very quickly, or you feel like you're going to get pushed down and go under and get trampled, and you know
Yeah.
um and so I do think that could be distilled into a moment of trying to respond to a traumatic event, because
Yeah.
certainly it is frightening when you're faced with large stampeding animals. And then the part at the end of the dream where I was panicking, like I don't want to change history, we were talking about a script, and part of it was that if it had been going along like the myth was supposed to, I would have known that all I have to do is just like climb onto the bull's back and he's going to take me to an island. And, like
Yeah.
I wouldn't have had to like think through, like, what do I do now? But it wasn't unfolding the way I expected. It wasn't unfolding the way I'd always been told. It was totally different. And so then that put more pressure on me because I didn't have the script. I was
True.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's where I
yeah.
get touched. I get touched again. I don't have the script. I think I know what life is supposed to look like. I know some of the mythologies. I know some of my own teachings that I was raised in, faith group and or otherwise. I know the scripts of the government. I know this, I know that. And this dream isn't letting me have those traditional scripts. And facing a herd of bulls. We haven't talked about that. That's a powerful image. It could have been elephants. It could have been,
Right.
bison, and in the dream, it's bulls. And I was raised around cattle. I know of stories of where uh, a docile, is that the right word, bull attacked and killed a rancher. I know some of those stories. It's like, how does that happen? They're supposed to be not like that, and they do. And so it's an unpredictable, animalistic, primitive energy. And this is in me. This is in
Right.
me. How do what do I do with that energy in me? It's a whole herd. It's not just one. And then somehow this Zeus character becomes he is the herder. And I'm playing with the word herd. What do I hear that is
Mm.
helping me manage this chaotic herd of stuff, of energy? um, I'm going to stop there for a second, let Lauren respond.
Mm.
Um, hmm. So, okay, so you're playing with the word herd, so it's also what I'm hearing.
Mm.
and how am I dealing with this chaotic energy? Um, yeah, I mean, there are forces in me sometimes that maybe not always forces, but maybe desires that we have that sometimes scare us.
Mm.
Like maybe the middle-aged, trope of the guy selling everything and buying a Corvette or something, like
All right.
sometimes we have very powerful desires or um
Right.
visions of things that 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 kind of, I think, can scare us, like that it could upend everything if we acted out those things.
Mm.
So um and sometimes I think, yeah, and I think even in minuscule ways, like where I was talking about how when my son was born, I was suddenly put into this very structured life. And it's 24/7. It's not, just 8 hours a day. And so even on a daily basis, I'm always struggling with my desires. Like if I sit here for 34 more minutes doing whatever it is I'm doing right now, I'll be late on my son's, you know, whatever medical thing, his schedule. And if I'm late on his schedule, there could be consequences for that. So it's like a life of constant discipline, and you really don't get a moment off, which some people might thrive in that kind of setting. But for me, sometimes I wish I had a little bit more flexibility. But um, so it's always feeling, so for me it's not always just about the big things. Like I wish I could just go live in Europe for a month, and or something like that. It's not always a big thing. Sometimes it's just like
Oh.
I wish I could have just 15 more minutes being lazy watching a TV show or something like that. I mean, it's a small daily battle of discipline versus the things, the things inside of me that sometimes it can get overwhelming.
Thank you for sharing all that, Lauren. I'm so sorry that, your situation is the way it is. And it sounds like it's very draining. And my heart goes out to you, this, what you're experiencing with your son. But you seem so strong and so, you're
So bullish.
so bullish. That's
Yeah.
the thing. I mean,
Yeah.
and the thing is, I mean, really, honestly, I have great respect for that. I know how I've worked with a lot of people who have dealt with, long-term care, for their children or for their parents, and I understand the caregiver syndrome of, it's all I have to sacrifice so much of my life, as the caretaker. So thank you for sharing that. It helps me to enter the dream even more. And I'm still going along with the track that Royce started. Dr. Fitz started.
Yeah.
It just cracks me up. Sorry, I love it, Dr. Fitz. Anyway, Dr. Fitz has mentioned.
The Reverend Dr.
Oh, that's
Fitz.
right. Sorry, Reverend Dr. Fitz. There's as that's what I was saying in the beginning. If it were my dream, to look at it in the outline of the myth, but to also take all these symbols as though they are my own, because it's my dream. And my dream can show me anything it wants. And see, that's just the most miraculous thing about the dreams, is they're limitless. They're absolutely infinite. So the fact that my dream brought me these images that remind me so much of this Greek myth right away is special. But how do I fit into that? And how does that myth speak to me? Well, first of all, of course, the herd of bulls, very masculine symbol. I mean, like, how could you not? I get more masculine than that. And so there's this a tremendous masculine force within me as the dreamer, but also the fact that I'm able to, I see this young man and I think to myself, oh, that's Zeus. And the fact that I can actually witness him, that I can actually have a, a conversation with this Zeus, says to me that there's some part of me that has that level of strength and that level of sheer masculine divinity. I mean, just to put it flat out there, I mean, that means that there's some spiritual masculine within me that's stronger than I might not even understand, realize it myself. But the dreams come in the service of health and wholeness, and they always come to give me more information to help me evolve my consciousness past where I am now. And so when I'm feeling drained and oh, my life is so structured and it's a 24/7 job, I have to remember there's all of this strength behind me, and the dream world's at least voting for me tapping into that strength. And I think the part at the end, when I end the dream, might be that I'm overwhelmed by it. It might be like, oh wow, really? Me? Little old me? I'm gonna be part of this huge myth. I'm I'm communicating with Zeus. So it just seems to me like there's this um wonderful level of strength that I can tap into anytime if it were me. And when I do feel weary, to go, right, herd of bulls. It's I gotta call on my herd of bulls.
Viviana had her hand up, and I want to come back to what Billie's saying in a second, but Viviana?
I was born with dislocated hips, and my parents had to helicopter around me to keep me happy and feed me and bathe me. And I had to go to, whenever I needed to go to the bathroom, I had body casts from here down to my toes. So I so much resonate with the feeling of discipline, the needing, the overwhelming burden, and as Billie said, the strength of those bulls just slamming on. And I identify with the creative spirit that loves the freedom, loves the travel, loves the, and as a fellow sometimes writer myself, this dream point would, if it were my dream, it would point. I mean, this is the beginning of a huge legend, my legend. This is the beginning of a myth. This is my myth, and I'm writing it. I'm Europa. I'm the heroine. I am going to use the thing that everything, the strength that I'm faced with, the overcoming, the bulls that are coming after me, as learning possibilities and as tools for future characters in my book, in my myth, in in this wonderful epic novel that I'm drumming up, that I'm learning from all these experiences and able to use them as tools for my characters in the future. And if I may step into a little bit of astrology.
Okay.
There is, Europa is an asteroid. And as we discover more beings in the solar system, we're, as astrologers, coming up with more myths and going with the myths behind them. And Europa in the chart shows where we easily fall for seduction. So things that we're tempted to doing. And in this, and I found it interesting that this dream came to me during Taurus season, Taurus ruled by the bull. And that the bull represents in astrology uh, where um, pleasure. The Taurians love seeking self-care. So this dream would remind me of the importance of my self-care as well, and maybe figuring out a bit of that balance, more of that balance. Maybe I need a little more. Maybe I should hire a few more helpers so that my son's taken care of, my family's taken care of, and then I can have a little me time. I can have some writing time. Just, I would also look into what Taurus energy is, which is all about languishing in self care and in things that I love.
Mm. Wow, that's beautiful. I've got a herd of them.
Lauren, where are you with absorbing this? What is this like now?
Um, well, Viviana, uh, is it at or ah when you say your name?
Ah.
Viviana or Viviana? Okay, Viviana. Um, she touched on a really important point that I struggle with, but I think all caregivers and even, parents of non-medical children struggle with, which is self-care.
Mhm.
Um, it's a huge challenge. And when I'm in the community of moms with disabled kids, it's especially a huge challenge for them and for me. And so it is an important message. When we go to doctor's appointments and when we're getting follow-ups with a specialist, they're not saying, so how are you holding up? They're
That's
saying,
right.
how is your child progressing? What is their weight? What are the blood tests showing? They're looking at everything about your child under a microscope. And it's not only just kind of like staring into an orb trying to divine what your child's future outcomes are going to be, but it's also like a report card for you.
Mm.
Like, you're failing here
Oh,
and you're doing well here. And if you fail, the consequences are like your child dies. I mean, it's like the ultimate pass or fail, right? And
wow.
um it it's an enormous amount of pressure, and so the drive to like invest in self-care really it does not come from that part of being a medical parent. It comes from other medical parents kind of reminding each other, like, we have to take care of ourselves so we can live to do this another day,
Mhm.
um and and that is, of course, a huge um concern too when there's someone dependent on you long term like that, because you think, I have to keep myself healthy and capable for as long as possible because I don't know how independent this person is going to be in
Mm.
the future. And and that becomes an extra worry for parents of disabled children. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, I do need to invest in more self-care. And unfortunately, a lot of times it's not in that kind of Taurus, I'm having pleasure from this type of way. It's more like, I have to do this for maintenance. I have to do this to glue the old body back together. you know, it's not but that pleasure aspect, like, I think I probably do miss pleasure a lot. I think I don't have give myself license as much to experience pleasure anymore. And I think that can happen when you become a parent. And I think especially when
Mm.
it's a little bit more under pressure, it's hard to find that space where you're not thinking about, like, okay, I have to finish this in 45 minutes so I can go do that and take care of this. It's pleasure can be elusive.
Yeah.
Very well said. And
And
dream,
I
sorry.
oh, I felt like I kind of glossed over what Billie had talked about, but um so so you were talking about the masculine energy, I think, right?
Yes. Uh-huh.
Yes.
Screams
and
masculine. This
and
whole
I
dream.
think that's Yes. So definitely finding that strength to push you through. Um, and I had to especially, I think, find that strength. I think I've become a much more hardened person through this experience because there were a few times in hospitalization situations, like where my son was in the hospital. And where when you have a child in the hospital, you can't pull them from the situation until they've been discharged. They are out of your control pretty
Right.
much. You're signing the papers, you're paying the bills, but you cannot protect them if there is a medical professional hurting them.
Mm.
And there were some situations where medical professionals had made mistakes while my son was hospitalized,
Oh.
and it had very severe consequences and almost cost him his life. And to and that is hard because you don't want to get yourself into a situation where you get thrown out of the hospital and you lose access to your child because you can't protect them anymore. But you also have to be strong to stand up to this staff in this very powerful hospital to tell them, like, my child cannot breathe, my child is in a coma, my child is having seizures, like whatever the situation is, and to keep persisting even if they do not believe you, even if they're treating you badly, even if they're threatening you, to keep saying my child is not okay, and to try to save your child even when you don't have very much power to do it. And those situations have happened with my son where doctors wouldn't listen and he was actually
Mm.
in one dying. I don't want to be dramatic about it, but it ended once they did listen and examine. That's what was happening. And so, and that happened in one very prolonged hospital stay. There were two complicated things that happened to him, and then there was another case where I was trying to get him hospitalized because he was in a life-threatening situation, and I was having trouble getting the doctors to listen to me and get him transported to a hospital that could help him. So I have had to learn how to be very tough. And
Yeah.
even when I am extremely sleep deprived and extremely beaten down and extremely just depleted, just figure out, like, how am I going to knock down all of these walls, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's a situation a lot of medical parents go through.
Mm.
And it is the one you go through. And two pieces,
Yeah.
many pieces stand out, Lauren, but two pieces stand out about what Billie said and what Viviana was also saying, that in my struggles to maintain, and not just maintain, but to push through the marketplace, to get into get the attention, the correct attention, because I do know what is needed to be done, and the enormous strength that it's a herd of bulls, and in my view, in the wounded male image, which looks like it's more directional than the female image, in mythology and in Jungian psychology, etc. But this is about power. This is about power. And in me, whether it looks like a male or a bull or a powerful woman, it doesn't matter. In the dream, I have the power. And it is a powerful power. And I am beyond my stamina, and I keep going. And what Billie helped me understand a bit ago about it, yeah, I have a personal beef with anxiety. Beef, get it? With anxiety, I don't like it. However, I heard Billie transform that into, this is excitement, and this is why I wake up. I have all this energy. It's not dread of anxiety. This is power that wakes me up, my energy that is beyond my conscious knowing. Again, not to be perfect. I can't control all the events outside of me, nor the events that happen to my beloved, uh, to my beloveds. But I can do my best, and I am doing my best. In fact, it wells up within me and wakes me up.
Yeah. Yeah. Wanted to say one more thing about the caregiver piece and the mothering piece. Um, my good friend Patty Ashley wrote a book called Living in the Shadow of the Too Good Mother Archetype. And she has a metaphor in there about when we reach that place of sheer exhaustion as a parent, like when we're taking a flight, and they talk about the air masks will drop from the ceiling, and they always say, put the oxygen mask on you before you put it on your child, because that's exactly what we tend to do as a parent. Like, oh my God, we want to make sure our child's okay, but I as the parent, I have to have the oxygen mask first. So she uses that as the part of the book explaining about how important it is for self-care in order to continue with our parenting and our very challenging situations, which it sounds like you're in. And it's like, so I would keep that metaphor in mind. This is the time for me right now to put the oxygen mask on.
Yeah.
In my beautiful region where I live, speaking about projection, where I'm in an isolated area, do I have options that actually exist that could help me about my self-care more than I'm able to tap into or that I haven't explored?
And this is Royce asking as though I'm Lauren. Like, do I as Lauren
Right,
have those
right. This is Royce asking as the dreamer. Do I have those options where I live?
question?
Do you want me to
Yeah.
answer it?
Well, yeah. Well, it's your choice, but
It's
that is
ours
the
to-
question.
Or just ponder it?
Okay, either one.
I think a general issue
Mhm.
is that there are resources, certainly, um and I guess I keep saying, talking about the other parents I've met, or the community of parents I've met. I keep speaking in that way because we tend to be our own greatest support.
Yes.
And so, um so I don't feel that I'm in this alone. I know other people are in similar situations, um and I can't really, so when I talk about what's happened to me, I always end up feeling connected to all of their experiences too, because some of them have helped me more than anyone else could, because they've walked in such a similar path, and they've had some of the greatest advice. But so there are more resources today than there would have been 30, 40, 50 years ago for a parent in my situation. um, but society as a whole still is trying to figure out how to integrate disabled people. And that includes integration of their families too.
Mm.
So right now we see it more as like special services and stuff. It's more, it's still kind of seen as like a side thing in our society, in our culture. Not really like, let's see how we can pull them all in as fully as possible. We're still working on that as a society.
Well,
So as far as resources, there are more resources to help me, but the system still has not figured out how to offer resources in a way that would fully help, I
yeah.
guess.
Well,
It's complicated.
When Viviana asked that question about, my own self-care, the dreamer's self-care, are there opportunities that you as the dreamer could take that really could help alleviate some of the strain that is absolutely overwhelming sometimes? Are those resources, are those friends, are those programs available? So the creative energies as the dreamer that I have, like my writing, like my other things, that I can give 15 minutes more sometimes, or half an hour more another time. Do those things exist where you live?
To a certain extent.
Or is it just a frustrating journey that because some places don't have those kinds of opportunities, and so self-care is so it's even more hard. And that's to ponder for a second, because I want to come back to this other piece that Billie brings up often, is the dream doesn't come to frustrate me. It doesn't come to just kind of say, well, this is the way it is, so what? The dream comes for our health, for our community, and for our individual health, healing, wholeness, and so what might the dream be encouraging me to look at that is within my grasp? And it's so close to my grasp that I wake up. It's exciting. I wake up. And because it exists.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, certainly I could get away probably for an afternoon of therapy or something, those things, but I think that the overwhelming pressure is often that you don't um you want to feel integrated back into society. But for you to be, we live in a society where it's so much about be tough,
Right.
be productive, perform up to this certain standard, that when you say, actually, I need more care and I need more help, society is like, quit being a whiner, quit being demanding, quit expecting special treatment, um, just figure out your problems. And when I'm like, no, you don't understand, because like we're human beings and we're part of a culture and a society, our situation has pushed us to the edge of society and we're not really fully included anymore. And
Right.
we want to be included. But in order for that to happen, you guys have to help bring us in. You don't realize it because we're invisible, but you keep excluding us. Like during the pandemic, when people kept saying, well, the people who are especially vulnerable, they can just stay home, they shouldn't force us all to do things to protect them. And I'm not saying what people should or shouldn't do to protect other people, but just the fact that they had that attitude, it's like, okay, you say that about my child, so now he can't have friends or he can't have play dates because he's vulnerable. And that means his sister also can't have play dates and can't go to extracurricular things because she can't bring it back to him. And as his caregiver, I also have to withdraw from society. Like, you have basically just thrown our whole family out because you say
Discarded.
we
Yep.
aren't worth
Yes.
including. Yeah, you've discarded us because you've said that we aren't worth including and we aren't worth consideration. And so I think since 2020, like, this has always been in our society. We used to, not so long ago, we were institutionalizing disabled people. And so it is a learning process, and it's not something brand new. I mean, we know hunter-gatherer societies would take care of disabled people. There were mummies discovered in Florida, thousands of years old. One of them was a teenager with spina bifida. They were just keeping him alive with herbs and basic care, and he had a long life. Um, we have it in us to take care of disabled people. It's not brand new. It's just the way our society is now, making people
Yes.
understand why that is valuable and why it's important, and that saying, and the guilt you feel like asking for special accommodations and stuff. Um, and then having people ignore it because they're like, why are you being a whiner? And then you feel
Yes.
invalidated. Like, I remember asking for a handicap parking space in front of a pediatrician's clinic. And when I told the pediatrician that I had asked the city if they would do this, and he said, well, you just walk down to the end of the street and there's a wheelchair ramp there. But we're in a place that gets a lot of snow. So walking on an icy street
Yeah.
with your child's
Yeah.
wheelchair in the middle of winter when it's 0
So,
degrees to go around and get back up.
yeah.
So to hear that from your child's own pediatrician, I mean, just the invalidation
Yes.
and the being dismissed
And
constantly, it happens constantly. And that is part of the burden of
and
not having that holistic
Mm.
self-care, I
and
guess.
and so the waking dream affects it becomes this tormenting dream. The waking self experiences the torment, and yet the dream is also helping me in my dream to navigate myself in a way that's more holistic and more healing. And I think because the waking world really does frustrate me. The dream is not here to frustrate me. And that's what I want to kind of bring us back to, is to
Yes.
see what that is there. No, that I think you're pointing out, and that's why the dream has such a creative power, is that it's opposite in my dream of the way I feel sometimes in the waking world. So it's trying to invite me to consider that I do have this energy and beauty and power to affect some of the goodness and change that I'm yearning for. I saw Viviana's hand a second ago.
Yeah.
It's diving back into the dream.
Yeah.
What really sticks out for me is this mischievous, playful guy who is not the way I expect Zeus. And when I see it printed here, Zeus, us, see us, maybe,
Yes.
if you
Yeah.
stretch it a little bit. You don't expect
Mm.
Zeus or the Zeus inside of me to be this way.
Mhm.
Yet the dream is calling me to magnify this mischievous and playful side of me. It's magnifying it so that I can look at it, so I can what mischievous and playful, operative word, inside of me can I bring out more, or inside my son, who I maybe Zeus is my son,
Mm.
sharing and teaching me strength, teaching me the ends of you know, discipline and
Mhm.
structure and all of, I mean, what a gift that my son is bringing to me by bringing this magnifying glass of structure, of discipline, of, of strength. Strength is the most beautiful word, I guess I would put onto there. And Zeus is the one, this mischievous, playful being is not what I expected Zeus to look like. And he's the one hurting the bulls. He's not one of the bulls. He's hurting them. So he's controlling them. He has the power over them. I am hurting all these
Mm.
strengths. I am bringing in the power within and swooping it into me, breathing it, and then manifesting it and using it in a playful way. That's the main thing that I would want to dive into, if that resonates at all.
Nicely said.
Yeah. I'll have to think about that for a while. That's interesting.
Well, one
It's almost like making a playful challenge out of everything, I think, is what it sounds like to me.
I can just say from my life, that's what I've done. I mean, most people say, how do you do all that you do? Well, I grew up in a body cast from age 0 to 11. Life now is easy.
Wow.
Yeah. And every day I have to do my
Yeah.
exercises before coming jumping on the call. I was doing my physical therapy, and I have my things that keep me structured, that keep me, I have all these things that I have to do. But at the end of the day, I learn from the structures. I've learned from the discipline, and it's made me hugely strong. I'm so much stronger for sure than most people, I can tell you that. So that's why this dream and the situation really speaks to me as an opportunity to dig into it, to keep my creativity and put it back into my life, and my freedoms, put that back in somehow. It creatively, I know I would be able to manifest what my soul is yearning, and looking inside of this dream to see those ways that my soul is yearning to do this.
wow.
I like that.
So one thing about the abduction myths and how Zeus just finds a goddess, he falls in love with her, and then he whisks her off wherever. That has a lot. The metaphor has a lot to do with decisive action, and that's one of the most positive things about when we get our really in touch with our inner masculine is decisive action. And that means as you were describing in the hospital, I had to talk to these doctors and make it really clear that they made a mistake. That is that Zeus energy inside going, this is not good. I could fulminate you any minute. There's this, and there's a herd of bulls right behind me. So there's that feeling of like appropriate authority and appropriate decisive action. So I think in my version of the myths of the abductions, even with Persephone's abducted by Hades, and it's like that's when everything begins. I mean, nothing really starts. She doesn't become Queen Persephone until Hades takes her, and most of the goddesses that Zeus abducts, he ends up having children with them. He impregnates them. So there's a whole nother creative level to that. If that decisive action leads to creativity, leads to something new being born.
That's true. And as far as just from a mythological standpoint, like that's kind of the character of Western society, right? Taking decisive actions to create all of these huge things. I mean, it's good and bad.
Well,
But
sure.
yeah, but one thing that I don't think I emphasized when I was talking about the dream, but when I think about it, in abduction myths, like the woman has no choice. She just kind of gets thrown into it. In my dream, the woman, Europa, had a choice because Zeus wasn't going to abduct her. He was trying to talk her into going
Right.
with him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the point where I panicked because I was like, I don't know what the right choice is. I'm getting out of here. Europa has to make this choice, not me. And and then it goes from being kind of a patriarchal story to a story where the feminine part has a lot more power. And when I was reading a little bit about the myth, they said in earlier versions it might have been Poseidon, not Zeus. And they also said Europa, she might have been based on a real woman who lived and married an aristocrat and moved to Crete. So it's kind of like Zeus in history. He gets switched out a couple of times with different figures, Europa remains the same, and she might have even been real,
Mhm.
and it's a whole continent of people that carries
Yes.
her name, not Zeus's name. But she gets overshadowed kind of in the mythology. But in the dream, it kind of pushed her into a place where she had more power.
Right.
And that was, yeah.
And that is my dream. I have more power than I'm creating a new mythology. I'm creating a new way to be. I'm reforming, redefining who I am. And it excites me so much. I wake up. That kind of, bone chilling, wonderful, creative energy. Lauren, how are you doing with all of this? This is an amazing dream, and we're coming to some place of what is the word again, Billie?
Arbitrary close.
Arbitrary close, because we could go for
Yes.
years. We could go for years with this.
No.
Yeah,
And
they like to unfold like that.
yeah. So as we arbitrarily move toward closing, where are you with what you've heard and what resonates and what doesn't, and what do you feel like you're going to leave with?
Well, I mean, this has been awesome. You guys have really coaxed a lot out of me. So you were kind of playing the role of Zeus, maybe?
Right. And we're playing
Kind of
the
talk.
role of self-care. We're offering care
Yes.
in this. So yeah, preach it, sister. Mhm.
So I've definitely pulled more from the dream than I would have if I would have just kind of ruminated on it myself. And yeah, I need I need to explore those. It kind of turned out to be a dream more about forbidden things than I thought, like because I don't know if you know this, but people don't really like a bossy woman. Like when you go into a hospital or something, like they don't.
Oh.
So
The
to
timbers
kind of
shake. The timbers shake when a bossy woman comes in,
Mm.
as they should shake.
That's good.
it goes better if you're kind of just more agreeable. You don't want to be too bullish, but to kind of like revisit that idea of like the bullish power and like the from the astrology standpoint, like self-care, maybe even taking pleasure in some things, and just confronting power in myself too. Yeah, I think I push those back too often, and I need to confront that a bit more. I mean, it's easy to push that back when each day has so many demands, but I think that if I'm dreaming about those themes, it's time to stop kind of pushing it back.
Yeah, good point.
Well, thank you, Lauren, for sharing this amazing dream. It'll stick with me a long time, because I mean, I rarely have seen a dream that unfolds very much like a myth. So I love it. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for reaching out.
And
Thank you for
Billie,
inviting me.
Well, I'm going to
Yeah.
move us back into gallery view, and we're going to do a little bit of a closing here.
Okay.
So Billie, if someone wants to get in touch with you, where might one do that?
My website is wakeuptoyourdreams.com, and I run a couple of groups a month, one that meets in the evenings and one that meets in the afternoons. I also do private sessions, and I also help people learn how to become dream workers. So I have a training program as well. So wakeuptoyourdreams.com.
Wonderful. And Royce, tell us about your TikTok channel.
Yeah. Okay. I want to say first, again, thank you, Lauren, for your generosity and your courage and your bullishness on life in many,
Bullishness. Yeah. There.
in so many ways, how you advocate for beauty and earth and for little living souls like you do. So thank you so much for being brave enough to share part of your journey here. People who are listening can find me at roycefitts, FITTS.com. And I'm a spiritual counselor and dream worker. And for me, those are a natural weave of how it is in our very challenging, beautiful, difficult world. How do we create meaning and beauty and purpose in the midst of some of the stuff that Lauren has shared with the anguishes of life that command our attention and cause us to willingly sacrifice for the sake of others.
Well, and I am Viviana, and I can be reached at viviana.org, viviana.org. I'm a musician who has stumbled onto Billie and Royce, and I am in love with the language of metaphors. May that be poetry, mythology, astrology, tarot. I dive into all of it, all the arts, all the healing arts are also I'm a very attracted to, and of course music, which is another language in itself. So this is why I roped Billie and Royce, and I hold the title of producer, and it is such a pleasure to have people like Lauren who have called into our dream hotline and shared a very intimate dream with us for us to all sort of take a look at. I mean, it gives us all such pleasure, and I hope that it's been also interesting for our listeners. And listener, if you have a dream, if you would like to call our dreamer hotline, I will repeat the number twice. The number is 720-573-9195. One more time, 720-573-9195. This has been the Healing Dreams Project podcast. And if you are listening to us on iHeartRadio, please give us a like. If you're listening to us on Pandora, we'd love to hear some responses from you. We are also on Instagram, on TikTok, on YouTube. And if there's a place that we are not and you want us to hear, just let us know. Anyway, Lauren, once again, thank you so much. It's been
Thank
such a
you.
pleasure to get to know you. I very much resonated with your dream, your myth, and your waking life dream and myth as well. So thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Thank you,
so much.
listeners. Happy dreaming.